The studio lights blazed brightly as Tom Hardy strode onto the set of Good Morning America, his muscular frame clad in a sharp black suit that accentuated his intense presence, while George Stephanopoulos, the seasoned anchor with his polished demeanor and crisp white shirt, sat poised behind the desk, ready to dive into what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview for Hardy's latest blockbuster film. But little did anyone know that this encounter would erupt into an unforgettable clash that would leave viewers stunned and social media buzzing for days, as Hardy, known for his brooding roles in movies like Mad Max and Venom, carried an air of unpredictability that often spilled over into real life, and Stephanopoulos, with his background in politics and journalism, was no stranger to tough questions. Yet on this fateful morning, the tension began to build almost immediately when George opened with a seemingly innocent query about Hardy's preparation for his roles, but Tom, sensing an undercurrent of probing into his personal life, leaned forward with a steely gaze, his British accent cutting through the air like a knife, responding with a sharp retort that caught everyone off guard, saying something along the lines of how the media always twists narratives to fit their agendas, and George, unflinching at first, pushed back with a follow-up on rumors surrounding Hardy's alleged on-set behaviors, which only fueled the fire as Tom fired back accusing the host of sensationalism, the exchange escalating rapidly as the audience in the studio held their collective breath, whispers rippling through the crowd while producers behind the scenes scrambled to decide whether to cut to commercial or let the drama unfold, and as the conversation veered into topics of celebrity privacy versus public interest, Hardy's voice rose in volume, his words laced with frustration from years of being under the microscope, dismantling George's points one by one with logical precision mixed with raw emotion, pointing out hypocrisies in the news industry that Stephanopoulos represented, all while maintaining a composure that was both intimidating and captivating, the back and forth turning into a verbal sparring match where Tom highlighted how interviews like this often serve as traps rather than genuine dialogues, and George, trying to regain control, interjected with statistics on media accountability, but Hardy wasn't having it, countering with personal anecdotes that exposed the flaws in such systems, the intensity peaking when Tom questioned George's own past in political spin, drawing parallels that left the anchor momentarily speechless, the camera capturing every micro-expression from furrowed brows to clenched jaws, as the segment stretched beyond its allotted time. Viewers at home glued to their screens, tweeting furiously about the epic takedown unfolding live, and by the end of this initial barrage, it was clear that Hardy had set the tone for what would become a legendary destruction of the host's facade, his arguments resonating with anyone tired of invasive journalism, wrapping up the first wave of confrontation with a poignant statement on authenticity in an industry built on illusions, leaving George to awkwardly transition to the next topic. But the damage was already done, the clash imprinted in the minds of all who witnessed it. As the interview pressed on, undeterred by the earlier sparks, George Stephanopoulos attempted to steer the conversation towards safer waters, delving into Tom Hardy's philanthropic efforts and his advocacy for mental health awareness, topics that should have been unifying. But Hardy, still simmering from the previous exchange, interpreted the shift as a patronizing move to paint him as the troubled star needing redemption, his response laced with sarcasm as he quipped about how convenient it was for networks to highlight charity work only after digging for dirt, and George, ever the professional, smiled tightly and probed deeper, asking about specific challenges Hardy faced in his career, which prompted Tom to unleash a torrent of critique on the entertainment industry's double standards, where actors are expected to bare their souls for ratings while hosts like Stephanopoulos hide behind scripted questions. The dialogue intensifying as Hardy drew comparisons to historical figures who fought against media manipulation, his eloquence surprising even the most skeptical viewers, and as George countered with defenses of journalistic integrity, Tom dismantled each point methodically, using examples from recent scandals involving other celebrities to illustrate his arguments. The studio atmosphere thickening with anticipation as audience members shifted in their seats, some nodding in agreement with Hardy's bold stance, while others gasped at the audacity of challenging a mainstay like George on his own show. and the clash reached new heights when Tom brought up the role of morning shows in perpetuating superficial narratives, accusing them of prioritizing clicks over substance, to which Stephanopoulos retorted with claims of balanced reporting, but Hardy was relentless, firing back with facts about viewership declines due to distrust in media, his voice booming across the set as he gestured emphatically, the cameras zooming in on the beads of sweat forming on George's forehead, a rare sight for the composed anchor, and as the verbal joust continued, Tom wove in personal stories of how invasive reporting had affected his family, humanizing his fury and making it relatable to the everyday viewer, effectively turning the tables so that George appeared as the aggressor, the exchange evolving into a masterclass in debate where Hardy's charisma outshone the host's experience, leaving Stephanopoulos scrambling for rebuttals that fell flat against Tom's impassioned logic, and by the midpoint of this segment, the internet was ablaze with clips going viral. Hashtags like #HardyDestroySGMA trending worldwide as fans rallied behind the actor's unfiltered honesty, the producers signaling for a break but the momentum carrying them forward, with Hardy concluding this phase by challenging George to reflect on his own contributions to the problem, a mic-drop moment that echoed through the studio, solidifying the explosive nature of their clash and setting the stage for even more intense confrontations ahead. Emerging from the commercial break, the energy in the Good Morning America studio was electric, with Tom Hardy and George Stephanopoulos locked in a stare-down that spoke volumes, as George tried to pivot to discussing Hardy's upcoming projects, hoping to salvage the interview's promotional intent, but Tom, sensing an opportunity to delve deeper, redirected the focus to broader issues like the impact of fake news on public perception, his words sharp and accusatory as he implied that shows like GMA contribute to the erosion of truth in society, and Stephanopoulos, defensive now, pushed back with assertions about fact-checking protocols, only for Hardy to counter with specific instances where ABC News had been called out for biases, the back-and-forth escalating into a full-blown debate on media ethics, where Tom's background and gritty, realistic roles lent authenticity to his critiques, making George's responses seem rehearsed and insincere by comparison, the audience erupting in murmurs as Hardy listed off examples of journalistic failures, from political cover-ups to celebrity smear campaigns, his passion evident in every syllable, and as the host attempted to interject with questions about Hardy's method acting techniques, Tom seamlessly tied it back to how actors immerse themselves in truth while journalists often distort it for narrative's sake, the clash intensifying with each passing minute, cameras capturing the raw emotion on both faces, George's usual calm cracking under the pressure as he raised his voice slightly, a rarity that delighted the live viewers, and Hardy, capitalizing on the moment, delved into the psychological toll of constant scrutiny, sharing vulnerable insights that humanized him while exposing the host's detachment, the dialogue weaving through topics of accountability and transparency, with Tom demanding why anchors like George rarely admit mistakes on air, to which Stephanopoulos offered a measured response about ongoing improvements, but it rang hollow against Hardy's fervent delivery, the studio lights seeming to dim in comparison to the fireworks of their exchange, producers whispering frantically offset about extending the segment, as social media exploded with real-time reactions praising Hardy's bravery, the viral nature of the clash amplifying with every tweet and share, and as this portion unfolded, Tom masterfully dismantled George's defenses layer by layer, using logic, emotion, and wit to turn the interview into a platform for his manifesto against media overreach, leaving the anchor visibly rattled, his attempts to regain composure faltering as Hardy pressed on with unrelenting force, culminating in a powerful statement about the need for genuine conversations over gotcha moments, a sentiment that resonated deeply and marked yet another victory in this explosive encounter. With the clock ticking and the interview far from its scripted path, George Stephanopoulos mustered his resolve to bring up Tom Hardy's collaborations with directors like Christopher Nolan, aiming to lighten the mood, but Hardy, undaunted, used the segue to critique how Hollywood and media collude in shaping public opinion, his retorts laced with references to Orwellian themes that drew parallels to current events, and as George defended the symbiotic relationship between stars and press, Tom unleashed a barrage of counter-arguments highlighting exploitation and power imbalances, the clash reaching fever pitch as voices overlapped in heated discourse, the studio audience captivated by the unscripted drama unfolding before them, whispers turning to audible gasps when Hardy accused the network of prioritizing sensationalism over substance, citing ratings-driven decisions that compromise integrity, and Stephanopoulos, his face flushing, retorted with examples of impactful journalism, only for Tom to dismantle them by pointing out selective coverage and omissions, his British inflection adding a layer of authority that made each word land like a punch, the exchange evolving into a philosophical battle on the role of media in democracy, where Hardy's outsider perspective clashed with George's insider defense, cameras panning to capture the intensity in their eyes, beads of perspiration and furrowed brows telling the story of a true confrontation, and as the debate raged, Tom shared anecdotes from his career that illustrated media's invasive tactics, from paparazzi chases to fabricated stories, humanizing his stance and garnering sympathy from viewers worldwide. The live feed cutting to split-screen reactions from co-hosts who watched in stunned silence, producers debating intervention but ultimately allowing the spectacle to continue, knowing it was gold for viewership, social platforms lighting up with support for Hardy's takedown, memes and clips spreading like wildfire as fans declared him the victor in this verbal arena, and George, struggling to pivot, found his questions met with incisive responses that exposed flaws in his logic, Hardy's charisma shining through as he maintained control without raising his voice excessively, a testament to his acting prowess applied to real life. Wrapping this segment with a call for reform in how interviews are conducted, urging hosts to foster dialogue rather than ambush, a mic drop that left Stephanopoulos momentarily at a loss for words, the explosive clash cementing its place in morning show history. As the confrontation barreled towards its climax, Tom Hardy showed no signs of backing down, his presence dominating the Good Morning America set as George Stephanopoulos grappled to maintain his footing. The anchor shifting gears to inquire about Hardy's family life in a bid to personalize the interview, but Tom, perceptive as ever, called it out as another invasive tactic, launching into a defense of personal boundaries that resonated with privacy advocates everywhere, his words flowing with conviction as he dissected the ethics of such questions, and George, countering with the public's right to know about public figures, found himself on the receiving end of a masterful rebuttal where Hardy drew analogies to everyday intrusions, making the issue universal and compelling, the studio humming with tension as audience members leaned forward, hanging on every word of this riveting exchange, cameras zooming in on the subtle shifts in body language that betrayed the underlying power struggle, and as the debate intensified, Tom wove in critiques of corporate media ownership, accusing conglomerates of dictating narratives for profit, to which Stephanopoulos offered a nuanced defense, but it crumbled under Hardy's relentless scrutiny backed by facts and passion, the clash transforming the morning show into a battleground of ideas, viewers at home tweeting their allegiance to the actor's cause, the viral storm growing with each passing second as clips were shared across platforms, producers sweating behind the scenes over the uncharted territory, yet thrilled by the unprecedented engagement, and Hardy, sensing victory, pressed his advantage by challenging George on specific past interviews where similar tactics were employed, exposing patterns that left the host defensive and exposed, his responses growing shorter as Tom's eloquence filled the air, the back and forth a symphony of conflict that captivated the nation, co-hosts exchanging wide-eyed glances from the sidelines. The atmosphere charged with the electricity of authentic confrontation, and as this phase drew to a close, Hardy delivered a poignant reflection on the human cost of fame, urging empathy over exploitation, a statement that not only destroyed George's arguments but also elevated the discourse, leaving an indelible mark on all who witnessed the explosive clash. In the final throes of the interview, with time running out on Good Morning America, Tom Hardy sealed his dominance over George Stephanopoulos. The anchor's attempts to wrap up gracefully met with one last surge of critique from the actor, who summarized the flaws in modern journalism with surgical precision. His closing remarks a tour de force that encapsulated the entire clash, and as George tried to interject with thanks and well wishes, Tom interwove a call for accountability that echoed beyond the studio walls, the audience erupting in applause that drowned out any rebuttal, cameras capturing the moment of triumph as Hardy's steely resolve contrasted with Stephanopoulos' forced smile, the explosive encounter concluding on a high note for the challenger, viewers worldwide hailing it as a destruction of epic proportions. Social media ablaze with analyses and praise for Hardy's bravery in speaking truth to power, producers rushing to manage the aftermath as the segment ended abruptly, the legacy of this live clash destined to be replayed and debated for years, a testament to the unpredictability of unfiltered dialogue, and in retrospect, what began as a promotional spot transformed into a cultural phenomenon, with Tom emerging as the unequivocal victor, his words inspiring a re-evaluation of media practices. The title Tom Hardy Destroys George Stephanopoulos live on Good Morning America after explosive clash perfectly capturing the essence of the event that shook the broadcasting world to its core.